One of these times, they're gonna knock on a random door, and Tamara will actually be home. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2018 slasher, The Strangers Pray at Night. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. The Strangers Pray at Night stars Bailee Madison, Louise Pullman, and Martin Henderson, and was directed by Johannes. It tells the story of a family who are attacked by masked strangers while staying at a secluded off-season vacation trailer park. Sequels can be a challenging thing for any genre, but they're especially tough in horror. I realize that might initially seem silly when you think of all the long-running franchises and yearly sequels so many horror movies have spawned. It's easy to make a sequel, but to make a good one? That's another thing altogether. You can't just rehash the first movie, but you also can't do something completely unrelated either. Instead, you need to use the original core concept to craft another different story. Reusing characters, killers, settings, etc. can be helpful in making the link for audiences, but the real key to a successful sequel is understanding what it was that made people like the first one. Unfortunately, that was not a sequel crafting technique employed here with The Strangers Pray at Night, something that still strikes me as strange, considering Brian Bertino, the writer and director of the first film, co-wrote this one as well. But for whatever reason, this feels like the creation of somebody who had no clue why the original film was a success. I'll give them and everybody else a hint. It wasn't the masks. Maybe Pray at Night could have functioned on its own as an unrelated slasher, but turning it into The Strangers 2 was a poor decision. Sure, we've got the trio of masked strangers again, who are presumably supposed to be the same characters as in the first film, though it's 3 new actors underneath the masks. Once again, they seemingly randomly target and terrorize people in an isolated location, an off-season vacation trailer park this time, but that's where the similarities end. The Strangers was an effective home invasion thriller, gradually building tension with its creepy scenario and good sound design. It was scary, or at least unsettling, because it felt like it could actually happen. The characters, both the protagonists and the strangers, felt like actual real people, and the whole story was bleak, brutal, and fairly realistic. Pray at Night is a neon-soaked 180 from all of that. It's a super stylistic film that not only drops the realism, but also drops the home invasion tension, instead swapping it out for standard slasher scream and run action. There's no tension, no suspense, just a big brash slasher attempt full of jump scares. There's certainly some entertainment that can still be gleaned from standard and even substandard slasher fare, but the approach here is miles away from what was in the original movie. Okay, so let's talk about these characters. This is always a bit of a touchy subject in horror, and in slashers particularly, most characters are often not much more than knife fodder. To be fair, the characters in the first Strangers movie weren't that great either. The strangers were menacing in their silent brutality, but the victims were little more than blank canvases, making a series of dumb decisions. Well, here in Pray at Night, the victims are mostly irritating characters, making even dumber decisions. The family dynamics are lame and unconvincing, and there's nothing to grab onto or make you care about any of them. And there's enough attempted setup to them that you can't even project yourself onto them and the situation like was possible with the original. Yet even with the setup, there's still nothing to them. They don't feel like a real family or even real people, and there's no growth to them. The teens are slightly more interesting characters than the adults, with Luke probably being the best of the film, but they're all plagued by dumb decision syndrome, which makes it really hard to care or root for any of them. They've got so many opportunities to call for help, to escape, to injure or kill the strangers, and yet they opt to scream, run, and beg over and over again. The third act offers up a bit more satisfaction, but not enough, and not in ways that we haven't already seen in other better films. Speaking of which, wow is this movie an unrelenting homage fest. The first film drew inspiration from some 70s movies, but the story itself had a bit of a timeless quality to it. But this one, it draws inspiration from the 80s and then never shuts up about it. Tons of references to other films, a continuous barrage of 80s pop hits, a synthy Carpenter-esque score, neon-soaked cinematography with near constant slow zooms. Hey, at least it's better than the incessant shaky cam from the first movie. 80s aficionados might appreciate the random anachronistic 80s overload more than I do, but the media 80s nostalgia obsession that popped up during the 2010s had long overstayed its welcome for me by the time this film was released. I'll give this movie some credit for its atmosphere, even though there's no real tension and all the scares come in the form of jump scares. Some effective, some not. But there's no sense of dread here, just flashy slasher silliness that loses the realistic edge of the first film. All that said, it does look good, and it has a nice vibe to it. Every time I watch this movie, I mistakenly think I'm gonna suddenly like it, because I wanna like it, and when I think back on the movie, my mind jumps to the pieces that I genuinely enjoy. There are certain scenes and set pieces here that really work for me. The pool sequence is an obvious highlight, but inevitably, as a whole, the film always lets me down. It tries so hard to be these other 80s things that it loses its own sense of identity, and the thing that made The Strangers effective and successful to begin with. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro is the cinematography. They overuse the slow zoom to the point where every static shot feels like it's slowly zooming in, because I think it is, but it's hard to deny that this is a good-looking film. It's got a moody visual aesthetic that contributes to the atmosphere, since actual tension and suspense are incapable of doing so here. Lots of fog, lots of neon, lots of hazy light warmly tapering off into ominous darkness. From a visual perspective, this is leaps and bounds better than the first film, but that's the only example of that kind of improvement here. On the con side, the biggest issue has got to be the characters. As with the original film, I realize that character criticism in horror movies is low-hanging fruit, and with slashers, we're practically dealing with fruit that's already rotting on the ground. But it's hard to overstate just how poor these characters actually are. The setup and attempts at characterization are rough, ensuring that we never actually care about them. But then on top of that, they just make idiotic decision after idiotic decision. It's not until the third act that these characters show any sense of wherewithal, but even then, it's in very limited quantities. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying The Strangers, Pray at Night, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy on one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them, if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give The Strangers, Pray at Night 2 out of 5 paws. It's a high 2, but no matter how many times I watch this movie, I just can't give it that extra half paw. It's got some nice atmosphere and cinematography, but this 80s obsessed slasher is all homage with no tension or understanding of what made the original Strangers work. I would recommend The Strangers, Pray at Night to people who just want a mindless slasher movie that looks nice. If you want scares, tension, good characters, or an interesting story, you'll probably want to look elsewhere. But 80s music fans will definitely have some fun with the soundtrack here, and this might entertain if you just want to throw something dumb and light on. If you liked the original Strangers, you'll probably be underwhelmed by the change in direction here, but if you were bored by that one, it might be worth giving the sequel a shot. If you liked The Strangers, Pray at Night, I would recommend It Follows. This is an allegorical supernatural horror that focuses on a teen who finds herself pursued by an unrelenting and unstoppable entity. It's not a slasher, but it's very 80s inspired, and is another great looking horror film. Plus, it's got another memorable pool scene. If you want some more great cinematography and atmosphere, but prefer a horror film actually made in the 80s, you'll want to check out Christina. It's got the visuals, the Carpenter score, and another memorable flaming car scene, all without any masks, just a killer car. And if you'd like to stick with a more traditional slasher, you should check out Halloween 2018. It's another modern set slasher that's bathed in nostalgia for a time long since past, except this time, it's actually got a decent story, some tension, and most importantly, an understanding of what made its original film so effective and successful. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen The Strangers, Pray at Night? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie from the 80s nostalgia craze? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.